Hello and welcome to Talking Heads in partnership with the Actors Center, NewFilmmakers Los Angeles and Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny De Lillo and we're here at the Cambridge Los Angeles showroom in West Hollywood, and I'm here with movie producer Stephen J. Wolfe. Stephen, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and cheers. Well, I don't know what we're success into. Great taste in shirts, I think.
Thanks.
Oh, it's the real stuff. Stephen, it's a real treat to have you here and be able to share your wonderful career and experience with us.
I'm glad to be here.
When was the moment when you felt like, I want to be a movie producer?
I don't know. I knew I wanted to make films and work in the film industry since I was a small child, really. And, I got my start in the business when I was pretty young, but it really wasn't until I had been in the business for a while that I knew I wanted to be a producer. I was kind of pushed into it. Mm-hmm. And by a company that I was working for, they thought I should be a producer, and I was kind of kicking and screaming the whole way. And once I started doing it, I discovered that I really liked it. So, and from there, it just felt very natural to me, and I kept on going. And
you've made an absolutely wonderful career out of it as well.
Thank
so far.
I don't always still believe that I'm a producer.
It's like,
but they keep happening every year, sometimes more than one a year.
Well, it shows on IMDb that you're making more and more films by the minute, which is great. And you have produced some fantastic films over the years and started Sneak Preview Entertainment. When did that come about that you decided to start your own production company?
Well, during the 1980s, I worked for a large independent company called Crown International Pictures. That's where I got my start producing. They were a production and distribution company. Mm-hmm. And I had been there about 3-4 years when I got my first job as a producer on one of their films. And I would say another 4 years or so, I was kind of ready to do different films. We did teen comedies that were really popular in the 80s, and I had a lot of fun doing those, but I wanted to do different kinds of films, and I wanted to work with different people and different actors, and start to sort of pick the films that I wanted to do, whereas when I was working at Crown International, they were all films that the company was developing, so I enjoyed working on them very much, but they weren't necessarily things that I picked from idea stage, or things that I read and felt I had a passion for initially, although I did like all those films very much. So it was kind of a natural to start my own company, and I ended up starting Sneak Preview Entertainment in the early 90s.
Wow.
With a partner, actually, who I had worked at Crown International with. She was a writer, and we remained partners for about the first 10 years of the company.
As a producer, what is it when you get a script and it comes to your office, what is it that kind of makes it tick for you?
I just know when I'm reading it, there's something about it that moves me in a particular way, whether it makes me, laugh out loud, moves me to tears, or gets me thinking because it's such an interesting story. I like films that are character-driven, so I don't tend to gravitate towards big, tentpole action adventure movies, although I enjoy them when I go to the movie theater. But as far as what I want to make, I like things that are about people and characters and oftentimes kind of thought-provoking, or, a different spin on something than we've seen before. So, I really know when I'm reading it, honestly. And then sometimes some of the films that we've done were just an idea that I had that, I thought should be a movie, and we started by finding someone to write it and direct it, and we went from there. So there's no real one way.
I can't even imagine what it's like having to be a producer and put all of those, make all those cogs work, with the director and the actors and the casting director. Is it sort of relationships that gets developed over time where you go and choose the same people? How does it work in producing?
It's great when I do work with the same people. A lot of actors I've worked with, people like Jennifer Tilly and I have done 8 movies together. Leslie Ann Warren and I have done 3 or 4 movies together. Cinda Williams and I have done several movies together. Lenny Von Dolan and I have done several movies together. There's a whole host of actors that I've worked with multiple times, and I really enjoy that. And oftentimes I've worked, there's a director I worked with like 3 times now, Salome Presner. I did her first feature, and then we did 2 other features together over the years. and there's actually been several directors that I've worked with, multiple times, and so you really have a shorthand when that happens, and it's fun if you like the people. I don't tend to work with somebody again if I don't like them.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
But I enjoy when that happens, but I also enjoy meeting new people and getting to, forming new relationships.
Yeah.
That's always fun too. The work is hard. Doesn't matter whether you know the people or don't know the people. The work's hard. But it does make it a little easier when you've worked together because you do have a shorthand. Like when I've worked with the director 3 times, by the 3rd time we just know how each other thinks. I recently just completed shooting a movie with a director I'd worked with once before about 10 years ago, and we picked up like that. It was like...
It's great. It's great when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, there was like no time, passed, and we think alike. We always, so it is nice to have that shorthand.
And, you've had many of your films, circulate on the film festival circuit,
Yes.
Including like Sundance, for example. Was there a film or a moment when you thought, I'm really good at this? Or was there a film where that happened for you?
No, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have 3 movies at Sundance, and each Sundance experience was different, quite honestly, and exciting for different reasons. I mean, the first one was exciting. It was a movie called Relax, It's Just Sex with Jennifer Tilly and Mitchell Anderson in '98, and it was exciting because it was my first Sundance movie. I had no idea how hard of work it was going to be and how crazy it was, but, it was obviously exciting. And then, freakishly, the very next year, I had another film there called Twin Falls, Idaho. That was great, less stressful because I already knew what to expect. And I had help selling that film, a really dear friend of mine, Rena Ronson, and who we've made a few movies together over the years, and she repped it at Sundance. So the first one, my partners and I were selling, so everybody was at us every minute. The second one, we had a rep, and so it made it a little bit more enjoyable. And plus I knew what to expect. And then the third one was 500 Days of Summer, and that was a studio film that already had distribution. So there was no real pressure as far as, are we going to sell our movie? Because it didn't matter. We weren't selling it. It already had a release date, and we were there just to premiere it. And obviously there was way more money because it was a studio film, and the digs were nicer, and all those kind of things, limousines, and so that was a whole different experience. But they were all great experiences. 500
Days of Summer. I mean, for all the millennials, pretty much know that film. It's a cult film for us. What do you think made that film just, it was a studio film, obviously, but it just...
But it had an indie sensibility.
It had an indie sensibility.
And it was a Fox Searchlight movie.
Right.
And Fox Searchlight movies, are more skewed towards indie sensibilities. So while it was made at a studio, it was made at a division of a studio that is more geared towards those types of films. And,
as a producer, are you a fan of independent film?
That's what it's been my whole career. So.
Yeah. But
I've done studio movies, but they have been films that had a bit of a sensibility of independent films. So, I've made a career out of making indie movies, really, and I love them. I like movies that make you think. I like movies that make you discover new things about people. So, like I said, there's a place for movies that are just basically special effects and roller coaster rides, but that's not what interests me as a filmmaker. With regards to, being the day-to-day movie producer that you are, what are some of the kind of toughest obstacles that you face in your journey as a producer? Well, it takes a really long time to get a movie made. So
patience.
Yeah, patience. You have to have tenacity. I pick things because I love them, because I know I will be self-motivated to work on them and think about them every day. Every day when I wake up, I'm thinking about one project or another, and what is it that I have to do to move that forward today, even if it's one little baby step. And I usually am working on 6 or 8 different things, and you have to, because it does take so long, and you really never know. Sometimes I think a movie's ready to go in a week. It seems like everything's lining up, and it's for sure going to happen, and then one thing falls out, and it gets pushed back 6 months. So that's constantly evolving, and so you have to be working on a lot of things at once, which means you have to be passionate about making them. You have to like the people you're working with. You have to be thinking about the filmmaker, the director, the writer every single day. Like, oh, I need to call them and talk to them about this. I have an idea. A lot of it's mundane. I mean, I run a company too, so I have to do things like approve payroll.
Yeah, important part though, right? Yeah.
Sign checks. That's no fun to me, but I do it. As part of pay taxes. Taxes are not fun, but they keep coming around every few months.
Yeah. As a producer that's say starting out in their career, do you have like any pieces of advice that you would wish you knew back then that you know now as a producer?
I don't know so much that I wish I knew, but it's confirmed for me. You hear things like you have to have tenacity. You have to not want to do anything else. You have to be self-motivated, driven. Live, breathe, and dream whatever it is you're working on. And all those things are really true. You find out over the years that the only way you got so many things happened because I just kept banging on doors. You hear no. You're going to hear it 1,000 times for everything you're doing. But all of a sudden, one person opens a door, and you tell them what it is you want to do, and they say, "Oh, that sounds interesting to me. Tell me more."
Yeah.
So that's what you're chasing, really. I mean, you're always chasing money. And I think one of the biggest things I did learn that I didn't necessarily know when I was younger, and I do tell everybody, I mentor people through the Producers Guild, and I enjoy helping people who are on their way up, and I always tell them, when you get a no, when you ask somebody, can you help me with this? Do you have some money for this? Or can you help me get to this actor? Or whatever it is you're asking for, when you get a no, always ask them, do you know somebody who will help me? 85% of the time, they're going to say, oh yeah, call this person or call that person, and you'll get more leads that way. So people want to be able to help. They just, for various reasons, can't always help you. Every film's not right for every person or at every company. But if you have relationships, people want to help you, and you just ask. When you're getting a no, you say, who do you know that might tell me yes, basically.
That's a really key piece of advice for life. I love that very much. Now, obviously, you've made a career out of independent film, and we both have the privilege of serving on the board of directors at NewFilmmakers LA. How has that experience been for you, being part of NewFilmmakers Los Angeles?
It's been great. First of all, I found that whatever organization I've gotten involved with, whether it be NewFilmmakers, the Producers Guild, or any type of organization, being active pays off. You meet great people. You make great relationships, and I enjoy helping other people. I'm really happy to give back. I didn't have anyone like that when I started in the business because I didn't know anybody in the business. I didn't have any friends. My family was not connected. I literally answered an ad in the Hollywood Reporter to work for free as a production assistant.
That's amazing.
That's how I met people. I'm still friends with that director over 30 years later.
Wow.
That project that I worked on, I just had brunch with him a couple of weeks ago, and helped him with his movie that he's doing now. So, but there was no one really for me to go to. It was hard, and I was shy, and I learned quickly. I'm actually naturally a fairly shy person, but I learned quickly that you better open your mouth and be willing to speak up and tell people what you need in a nice way, of course. But I learned, when I was 20 years old, I was scared to death to talk to a stranger on a telephone. All I do nowadays is talk to people who I don't even know on the phone all day long. That's part of the business and part of what happens. So, you kind of learn to get over those things that hold you back if it's something you really, really want. And again, if you're passionate, you're going to figure out a way to sort of get out of your own way, figure out how to find open doors, and and try and knock on those doors that are open for you.
I'm learning so much myself, actually. But what's so great is, as well, I think there's this kind of illusion, particularly on other parts of the world, like the UK, is that, everyone knows someone, who in the industry or have got that connection, and you came by knowing nobody, which is...
Well, I mean, my family was friends with somebody who was a writer on a talk show back in the 70s, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was of no help to me.
No, of course,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, literally, I had to make all my own contacts, and so you know, I kicked around for a while working for free.
Yeah.
I just kept working for free until finally somebody, you know, I met said, "Oh, there's a job over here. Would you like it?" And you know, and one thing just kept leading to another, and I got lucky enough to land on a show that was a big hit independent show at this company called Crown International Pictures, and I was just a production assistant, and the owners of the company took a liking to me, and that ended up becoming an 8-year staff job that launched my producing career. You know,
it's amazing.
It wasn't something I was planning. I was just, you know, I think it's important to think about what can you do today, always, you know, and at that moment it was like, okay, I could get a job on this, let's see where it leads. You know, it sometimes becomes too overwhelming if you try and put your entire future on your shoulders and go, I have to solve all this right this minute.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to live in the moment and the day and do what you can do that day, and the next day do a little bit more, and eventually, you know, if you have the tenacity and the stick-to-itiveness, you will hopefully get to where you're going to want to be.
I think that's interesting you said about being in the moment, because we often hear that on camera to stay in the moment, but then to be in the moment also as a movie producer is very helpful for the industry and in life too as well. I think really one of the things that is so interesting is that you mentioned is the fact that, you know, you overcame some fears of like being able to talk on the phone and communicate with people, and you know, it's not something that necessarily you're born with, but it's something you're accustomed to within your job and what's required of your job, which is absolutely fantastic that, you know, an advocate for that.
You know, I kind of looked around and I thought, oh, if I'm going to be shy and quiet, I'm never going to survive. My natural instinct is to be a little bit quiet and shy, but those who know me know I can open my mouth when I need to.
Like a good movie producer should, right? Negotiating those deals.
I speak up often too much.
Well, you've been very successful with it, so it's in your favor. Do you have any advice for anybody across the United States or other parts of the world about any advice about them coming to Los Angeles? What important key factors do people need when they come to LA? Because it's not an easy town to live in, breaking into the industry.
You know, I really admire people who have the guts to leave their country and come. And you know, there's somebody who works for me in my accounting department who, you know, left Eastern Europe and came to the United States with a backpack. And didn't know anybody and didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew he wanted a life in the United States, and by hook or by crook we met and became friends, and he ended up working for me. He's worked for me 12 years, and I enjoyed helping somebody who is really dedicated to figuring out how to make a change in their life, and it takes a lot of guts to do that. So of course, if you know somebody in Los Angeles or New York or wherever it is you want to land, obviously it's great, you know, but a lot of people come here, and you know, I just did that that BAFTA event for new filmmaker, or not
Newcomers, BAFTA Newcomers,
Newcomers, and I met a lot of people who just, you know, came to the United States with a backpack, and I really like to help those kind of people. So when I meet people like that, I'm impressed that you know, people have it in them. You know, I thought it was hard for me, but I didn't have to leave. I grew up in Los Angeles, so you know, I was here. I didn't have to move here, and that's a huge obstacle to begin with. But you know, if you know somebody, great. If you don't know somebody, I suggest, you know, very quickly doing things like hooking up with organizations like NewFilmmakers LA, Find, Film Independent, you know, networking organizations for independent filmmakers, where you can meet people and get involved, go to events, sit on committees, and, you know, before you know it, you will have a whole circle of people who are going to help you, basically.
I'm very inspired. I'm very inspired, as I know all of you are as well too. Are we allowed to are you briefly able, without saying anything too specific, about what your plans are next for you at Sneak Preview Entertainment? Oh,
well, we have a film in post-production right now called Everything But a Man, which was written and directed by Negase Like, who's the writer-director of a movie I did 10 years ago that sold to Searchlight. Actually, it was an indie film that sold to Searchlight called Fat Girls. It was Monique's first starring movie. So we're having a blast working together on that. I'm also working on a film about the making of Rebel Without a Cause, period film. Takes place in the 1950s in Hollywood. Really interesting script.
Yeah.
I'm working on a musical film right now.
Generally, a lot of projects
yeah,
right
I'm
now.
working on a high school set Jekyll and Hyde project. And then I'm also working on a movie with a writer-director named Alan Rudolph, who is a pretty seminal independent film director. He did movies like Choose Me and Trouble in Mind, and he wrote a script called Ray Meets Helen. Alan Rudolph wrote it. Leslie Ann Warren and Keith Carradine are going to star in it. And it's a love story about two older people who meet each other with mistaken identities. So they each think the other person is somebody different than they really are.
Wow.
And it's the story that unfolds as their love affair sort of comes together, and they continue this relationship with false identities.
You've got so many amazing different projects going on, and you just proved that you juggle a lot of different things, which is.
And there's always things that come up too.
Of course.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So sometimes we take on something new if we're passionate about it. And besides that, we're also a talent management company. So I have a lot of actors that I've represented a number of years. People like Nancy Allen and Kay Lenz and Kim Darby and some young and up and coming actors. I represent Lenny Von Dolan. And we represent Keith David. So we have about close to 30 actors that we represent between myself and my two partners.
I mean, it's overwhelming, and Stephen, you're one of the great people I've met since I've come to Los Angeles, and it's a pleasure to know you, and it's a pleasure for everybody else to hear your real, true, wonderful advice that is absolutely invaluable. So thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. There you go.